Hey, what's going on? It's the Doug Show. My name is Doug Cunnington, and in this episode, I'm going to talk to Evan Porter about zero volume keywords. This is one of our sort of deeper technical topics here, and if the prospect of hearing people talk about zero volume keywords sounds exciting to you, it's a little weird, and I'll be honest with you, but I like the topic. Evan thought it was great. Actually, this ended up being like a very popular topic as we were, telling people about it. So the cool thing is Evan, number one, he's a very good writer. He's actually an extremely experienced writer, and Evan had this great idea to write a post for an Niche Site project about zero volume keywords and how to find good ones versus bad ones, and when you may want to actually target a zero volume keyword. So we, number one, talk about why the actual value of zero for the search volume is a little bit misleading, and take it from there. Evan goes a little bit deeper into finding good keywords versus bad keywords that have a low search volume. And I will also mention that you should check out the original post. We'll put a link in the show notes and description on Niche Site Project so you can see some of the images that we're referring to in the discussion. And it's just nice to have the context of what's going on, everything, well thought out by Evan, and then writing the blog post. So do have a look over there. Additionally, I want to point you towards some of the other interviews that I've done with Evan. So he hit 4K a month, and then that was mainly with the use of keyword golden ratio terms. And then further, he had 8K a month. There's also another update. Either it has been published recently or it will be published soon, but keep an eye out for that, where Evan has actually taken a little bit of a traffic hit, about 25% down. But he's still doing this full time. So all is good. And we actually talk about that a little bit. So if you haven't heard that one yet, do check it out. Without further ado, let's get to the discussion about zero volume keywords with Evan Porter right now. Hey, what's going on? Doug Cunnington here, and I'm chatting with Evan Porter again. How are you?
Hey, Doug, I'm good. I'm glad to be back again, time number 4.
This is great. And Evan, I actually remember the last time we chatted a couple of weeks ago, you were wearing the same shirt, man. What's up with that?
Yeah, it's some sort of weird coincidence. I don't know what's going on.
So today we're going to talk about zero search volume keywords. And you were kind enough, Evan, to write a post for Niche Site Project. Very popular. And this is a great topic for us to talk about, just because it's confusing. Because why would we even talk about a zero search volume term? So can you just kind of lay out the framework of what we're going to get into today?
Yeah, definitely. So, if you've been following my story, my updates, that I'm a writer. I've written a lot of the content for my sites myself. I would say I've written over 200 posts in the past year and a half or so, personally. So I have a lot of data on which kinds of keywords have worked for me, which ones haven't. And different trends that I see. And, I've noticed something really interesting, that occasionally I'll go after a keyword that has 0 searches per month, according to, whatever volume tool that you use. I typically use Keywords Everywhere because it's easy and it's free. But I've noticed that sometimes those posts go on to perform super, super well in terms of organic traffic. I have a few that have even become my best performing posts. And other times, those zero volume keywords just totally flop and they bring in barely any traffic, which you would expect because they have zero volume. So I really kind of wanted to get to the bottom and figure out what the driving factors were of what makes a good zero volume keyword versus a bad one.
Cool. And quick note, the search volume tools, right? All of the search volume tools are using some algorithm and estimating what they think the search volume is for a given term. And actually even Google, if you have access to the keyword planner and you see the data, like they're averaging out the previous 12 months. And I'm pretty sure the numbers that they're using, even to the average, are not exactly right. So even the data from Google is just an estimate. So if whatever search tool you use says it's a 0 search volume, then it's not actually 0. It's probably like rounded in some fashion. So a extreme example would be like a seasonal term, say it's something about Christmas lights or something like that. Like it may be 0 for most of the year and then it spikes and it's huge for, 1 month or maybe 2 months. So if you average it out, it may show it's like a higher search volume than it is, but probably in, April, very few people are searching for like Christmas light terms. So just remember the search volumes are just an estimate out there. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely would agree with that.
And yep. And I've seen exactly what you mentioned. Sometimes like some of these terms, like you don't expect them to do anything. And then they have like a huge, set of, or a huge amount of traffic going to them. So you have discovered the secret of like identifying the good ones and the bad ones, or at least some trends. So tell us about that.
Yeah, this is the 100% guaranteed, no idiot-proof solution to getting organic traffic. No, yeah. So I've written a number of these 0 volume keywords, and like I'm the kind of person who likes to test things out. Like I'm not going to ask whether I should or shouldn't. I'm just going to do it and see like what happens and get myself some data that I can work with. And yeah, like I said, I've seen them totally flop and I've seen them do well. And so one of the trends that I've noticed when I do my keyword research, which I often do like in Google itself, that's where I do a lot of my keyword hunting. I'll type in STEM keywords into the Google search bar, see what comes up in the auto suggest, play the kind of alphabet soup game, adding certain letters, seeing what pops up. Reading related searches. People also ask all those little like features inside Google to get ideas. And yeah, I mean, you'll typically see keywords suggested by Google that have 0 volume when you do that. And the trend that I noticed was often you see these like clusters of keywords suggested by Google that are almost exactly the same thing. And they all have 0 or very low volume in these cases. So, I think the example in the post I used was, when's the best time to go to the grocery store? Just the kind of informational keyword someone might ask if they want to beat the crowds, right? At the bottom of that search result, there's like 8 other related searches that are asking almost exactly the same thing. And they're all 0 volume, all very low volume. And to me, what that indicates is that that's a topic with a lot of interest that's kind of disguised as a bunch of 0 volume keywords. And so if you write a post that covers that topic thoroughly, like there's a pretty good chance you can cash in on a lot of that traffic.
Okay. So until like break it down a little bit here. So there's a lot of different ways for a searcher to ask for that information. So instead of having like everyone's like ask, what's the best time to go to the grocery store? You may see like a bunch of different variations, maybe like say like, I'm just going to make up an example, like 25 different variations. And maybe each one of those is like getting searched for like 8 times or something. So like when you in aggregate, like that's actually a decent term, but it doesn't show up because it's like spread so thin because people are just searching in like different ways, right? Yeah,
exactly. I think it's just the nature of the topic. Like people aren't always going to phrase it the exact same way. It's not quite like, X product review where that's going to get pretty much everybody's going to write it the same way, more or less. Like these are those terms that are just, there's a million different ways you could phrase them and there's no accounting for that. And this is true of a lot of keywords, not just 0 volume, but it's a good indicator that a 0 volume term may have more interest in that general topic. It's just that people aren't phrasing it the same way.
I like to use Google in the same way that you're mentioning, especially for these kind of keywords where it's like auto suggest and related searches, because obviously Google's telling you that people are searching for those. Have you found any other tools to provide that information, or are you primarily using Google to tease out these 0 volume keywords?
Yeah, I'm primarily using Google. And that's the interesting thing about doing keyword research in Google is that they typically aren't going to suggest a keyword to you unless it gets some searches. Like if it's never been searched before, they're not going to suggest it to you. And so that actually brings us to kind of the opposite of these keyword clusters, which is zero volume keywords that really don't have any contextual similarities to the keywords that Google's suggesting. I think in the post I called them island keywords because they're just kind of plopped there in the middle of the related searches, and they aren't really actually related at all to the other things that Google is suggesting. And so, with my experience, when you write a post on a keyword like that, you typically aren't going to get a whole lot of traffic because it's very narrow in scope, and you're not capturing those clusters and those additional long tail keywords.
Gotcha. But you would still go for it potentially?
I mean, you won't get zero traffic. I'll tell you that much. I mean, in the post on Niche Site Project, I posted an example or two, and you'll get 50, 100, 150 page views a month on a keyword like that. I mean, that's been my experience, which is pretty good for a keyword that supposedly has 0 searches per month. But on the other hand, I think you can do a lot better if you're strategic about how you target those zero volume terms with the clusters.
Nice. And, we haven't mentioned it explicitly, but the fact that there's 0 search volume, generally that means the competition's like probably going to be pretty low, because the common knowledge, the common wisdom would be if it's 0 search volume, don't go for it, right? Like no one's searching for it. It's 0, right? So don't go for it. However, we know because of all the reasons we just said that some people are indeed searching for it, and you're probably going to get some traffic. But the cool part is like you can usually just publish it. You usually don't need any backlinks, and like you'll get a little bit of traffic. So very cool. Now, when you have identified a cluster of these keywords, you kind of get the idea of like what the person's searching for. How do you actually write the content for that?
Yeah, it's a good question, because the reason that I kind of figured out this technique in the first place was because I was having trouble deciding which keyword to use because they're all kind of the same. And you have to just, in my experience, you just have to pick the one that sounds the best, and make a judgment call. And then you can use those similar keywords, sprinkled throughout the post. But you don't need to worry too much about getting the keywords exactly right. It's more of a topical post. And so you're trying to capture all of these in one post that covers the topic thoroughly. It's not really about the exact keywords you use, but they are good to sprinkle in here and there.
Okay. And then more details, right? So for the URL slug, do you put like the full phrase in there, or do you try and mix it up and add some variation in the URL slug as well?
Yeah, I actually, I just keep my URL slugs really simple to like 2 or 3 words. And they are related to the keyword and they're descriptive, but I don't think very carefully about how they relate to the exact search phrase. In your experience, has that made a difference?
No. I do what you say. I mean, like generally for everything, if you're just good enough, if it's close enough, that's fine. You wrote the blog post, and you see the questions that some of the people ask, which we'll potentially get into in a moment. But like, I mean, people love the details, but like so many of the details don't matter and they're just a waste of time. So when people are like, actually, I just answered a question on YouTube today. Someone was like, I found a keyword golden ratio term. It's 7 words long, and to put that in the URL is going to be, quote, bad for SEO, which that's a whole other point, which we could argue, but we're not going to. Mm-hmm. And they were like, should I put it in there or not do it? Or what should I do? And the answer is you can do whatever you want. It probably doesn't matter. There's like a million other factors that are way more important. But yeah, in general, a short, simple URL is probably a good idea. But it probably doesn't matter too much. So.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that you don't want to overthink these things. Like if you find a cluster of 0 volume keywords or very low volume keywords that you want to combine into one post, like you just have to think like, what information does this person want that's looking for this stuff, and give them that. And like the keywords themselves aren't going to be make or break. It may be better if you use certain ones versus not, but like the general concept is to provide the information.
Right. And you have an idea of like what they're looking for, so you should be able to probably do it. Now, I have like a specific example of something that you can do. So if you make a decision, like you find like a cluster of these keywords, you pick a term that you're generally focusing on, that's the title, you use the other keywords in there, publish it, see what happens, check back in a month or two in your search console, use SEMrush, Ahrefs, whatever tool you want to use, see what else it's ranking for, and then potentially you could optimize, re-optimize, or change it up a little bit. And the example, because really like that's real data, right? Everything else is just us guessing.
Yeah.
So once you get the real data, you could do something with it. And my example is for niche site project. I have a post, which I didn't even look for search volume for it because I knew people were asking for it, but it's like the disclaimer for an Amazon affiliate site. I published the content. It started, ranking pretty well. And I think I used like disclaimer in the title, but then I saw, on some tool, I don't remember which one, that, disclosure was one of the more popular terms. So I just changed the title, left the URL slug, whatever it was, and then it's fine. It's also very short content because that's like someone wants an answer. They don't want to hear me like talk about a bunch of other stuff that's not really related. So, So if anybody wants an example, you could like check that out on Niche Site Project. So
yeah, that's a cool example. And I had someone reach out to me after I published this post on your site, and they were like, well, clearly what's happening here is you're writing these zero volume articles, but you're accidentally hitting on bigger keywords that are bringing in all that traffic. So like, why don't you just look for the bigger keywords in the first place? And I was like, well, sometimes you don't know, right? Like you find zero volume keywords naturally during your research, and then this is a way to vet them. Like you're never going to know every possible variation of that topic that people could search for. So you work with what you can see. And yeah, like that's a great method, is using the Search Console to figure out what you might have missed and then re-optimizing later for it.
Interesting. And you know what, that person that, that example, like, I don't know how to respond. Cause like, as I've like learned more and more, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to anything. I was like, you just have to like try it, publish it, and then go on. Cause I'm like, yeah, why don't we look for the bigger keywords? And I'm like, maybe we already found them. I have no idea.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and the disclaimer obviously is like, you always have to look at the search results and see if you can actually compete for it. Like you said, probably it's going to be low competition, but if huge authority sites are covering this topic really well on the first page, then maybe you shouldn't go for it.
Indeed. Now, did you by chance publish a fairly large number of these over a stretch of time by chance?
I published probably a dozen of these, so it's based on a smaller data set, but it's kind of just a trend that I've noticed and something I'm kind of curious to test further. Yeah.
Okay. And the reason why I ask is like these potentially could bring in a lot of like long tail keywords that you weren't intending on ranking for, like the cluster idea that we're talking about a lot here. But I know, I've seen on Ahrefs, because the graphs are nice. If you do publish a bunch of content like this, you may see like just a lot of keywords that you're ranking for in the like 10 to 100 range. So maybe not bringing in much traffic, but all of a sudden you're going along and you see like, oh, there's a whole lot more, or there are many more keywords that you're ranking for that you weren't. So kind of a weird way to frame that, but did you observe that too, or you just had so much content on your site that it was kind of like below the radar?
Yeah, I have so much content on my site that I'm typically in a boat where like I publish something and I don't think about it for a couple months until I come back and kind of see how it's doing. But it's rare that I'm going to do a huge deep dive on like one post to see how it's doing. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I relate 100%. It's only like after you like publish a bunch and then you realize that things are disorganized and you don't have a handle and you're like, oh, I need to go back and have a look. And then you realize that, you should do one or two things here, or you make the observation or whatever. So,
yeah.
You have a little checklist here about how to vet these zero volume keywords. So I didn't tell you to memorize this, so I'll read it out for you, and then you can fill in any gaps. So first,
see if I remember any of this.
Yeah, we could quiz you on it. So the first one is the keyword like suggested as an auto suggest or as a related search? So fairly straightforward. Nothing much to add there.
Agreed.
And the next one is, does it make sense as a topic? So does the keyword make sense as a topic? So anything to add there?
No, not really. I mean, you mentioned it yourself that you recently wrote something without doing keyword research because you knew people wanted to hear about it. And so I think you can use a little bit of common sense. Like if something just seems really, really obscure and it has zero volume and Google suggested it, but it doesn't make any sense to you, then, maybe pass. But you kind of, if you know the niche a little bit, like you can get a good idea of what a solid topic is.
Cool. And then you mentioned this one already. So you should check the actual results and ask yourself, can I compete with the top results? So do you have any guidelines on how you would make that evaluation?
Yeah. When I look at the first page search results, I'm always looking at relevance and authority. So relevance to the actual search phrase. So are people actually answering the question, or is Google just throwing other stuff up there because nothing good exists? And then the authority of the site's ranking. Is it other blogs? Is it forums? Is it Reddit? Is it low authority sources like that? Or are you competing against like huge media brands and authority sites that have already covered something similar? So you can make your own bar for where you want to go after things and where you don't, depending on how strong your site is, how confident you are in your ability to compete. But those are the two things that I look for.
Okay, cool. And I'll just mention on that, you can have a look and, look for the relevancy, look at how strong the competition is, but like you still don't really know.
Right.
And at this point for me, I'll usually probably go for it. Just because like the cost to do that is relatively low in the grand scope versus me like trying to figure it out, like something that you can't figure out. So I know you write a lot of your content. Are you sort of in that camp too, where you're like, I'll just go for it and see how it goes?
Yeah, I think the older and more grizzly I get, I'm just like, screw it. I'm just gonna I'm gonna write it. It's fine if I rank number 4. Like I'll probably get some traffic on it. I mean, I give it a look. Like I try to really ask myself if I think that I can be in the top, couple spots. And you can often win out just with a better headline, because of the click-through rates and things like that. So yeah, there's a million factors. You don't want to overthink it too badly. If it's a good topic and it's not completely saturated, like, yeah, give it a shot. See what happens.
Cool. And the last on your checklist is asking yourself, is it a cluster keyword or an island keyword? So I guess
you want me to recap that really quick, like what those are. So the cluster keywords are when you kind of go to the bottom of the Google search results and Google gives you like 10 related searches. When those are all kind of around the same topic and they're all very low volume or all zero volume, and they're all just variations of the same question over and over and over again, that's a cluster. The alternative to that would be like the island keyword, where there aren't really any other relevant related searches that Google is bringing up. And it's kind of on its own in the middle of some unrelated searches, I would call them.
Okay, cool. Now, this all sounds really good, and I want to caution people, don't go for too many, right? Like I wouldn't ever build a site with like, I'm going to target all zero search volume keywords. That's dumb, right? Don't do that. I think if you have a handful, like you said, you have about a dozen that you've published over time and you have well over 100 posts, right? Just in that sort of
over 200. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking like 5% or so.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's Actually, that's good because I've thrown out like, hey, if you went, 5-10%, that's probably okay. Like you'll get some data and information and, maybe, like you said, if you observe one of these keywords, you find one, you will maybe just write something, put it up. It just needs to be good enough. And then if you want to, right, if you start getting traffic, you can go back, make it a little better. Maybe you have a better idea of like what the users are looking for. And again, use real data from your actual site versus just like, all right, I'm just going to publish a bunch of content that maybe very few people are searching for. So do you have anything to add there or any insights?
No, that's exactly what I would say. I mean, I think you want to go for a diversity of search volumes and, see what your site can actually compete for. And like, I sometimes I like to publish similar posts that go after similar keywords with different volumes and kind of observe which ones rank fastest and how things go. And yeah, I just like encourage people to test things out and then get real data that you can make decisions from.
Cool. Now, you didn't put this in the article, but as we were just chatting, I was like, oh, I have an idea. And I think I've done this in the past, but didn't frame it in this way. So let's say you find a handful of these like related sort of keywords. Maybe you find a few of these like zero search volume keywords and you publish content, right? And then you're ranking for these, right? You're ranking pretty well. You're not getting a ton of traffic, maybe more than you expect. But at that point, you can build a lot of links, like interlinks through your site and potentially help boost traffic and boost the rankings on your site. So have you done any of that, or do you have any thoughts about like this conceptual sort of idea?
Yeah. So I think that every post like has some value. Like you said, I don't have any data to support this necessarily, but I believe that the more you publish on a certain topic, the more authority you gain in Google's eyes on that topic. So yeah, if you have a post about topic A, but it's not really getting traffic, like it's still valuable for linking to other posts on that topic. And I'm always a follower of, I think it was your advice to always have 2 links going out and 2 links coming in to every post. So that's just the way that I do it. And the way that I've been doing it, at least 2. So yeah, that's been working out pretty well.
Cool. And I think I heard it was like Kyle Roof, who I interviewed. Depending on when we publish this, it may be out or it may be coming up soon. But very smart SEO. He does a lot of experiments. Have you heard of Kyle Roof? Do you know this guy?
No, I have not. No, I have not.
Okay, so he does like SEO experiments and like does it in a scientific way. But he mentioned the term of like a virtual silo. So a silo is like where you're very intentionally architecting a site. You have like a parent and child relationship and it's intentional linking. Now, I don't think the intentional like architecture is so important, but I think the linking is. Kyle sort of like, he gave me some credit, for that idea as far as like, I guess it's valid, right? So he called it a virtual silo. And the idea is like intentionally linking these sort of related topics so that there's relevancy. It makes sense to link to them. It adds value for like the visitor if they wanted to research more. And it sounded like that's a great approach to like have an intentional way to do it. So you could do it with these like very low volume search terms. And hey, it's great to be able to get a link from some term that's ranking like, in the top 3 or something like that versus some post that's not ranking anywhere at all. So yeah, you could sort of take advantage of this and put it together with other ideas of interlinking and sort of architecting your site in like a more intentional way. So very long thought, but
yeah,
cool.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, like you said, that these zero volume keywords are often very low competition and pretty quick to rank for if you find the right ones. So yeah, I mean, I can definitely see a lot of value in building up a small bank of posts on a certain topic that rank highly, and then that can disperse authority throughout your site.
Yep. Awesome. So, Evan, any other thoughts on this sort of stuff before we tell people where they could find you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we covered it pretty thoroughly. I would just like I feel like you have to put the disclaimers in everywhere. Like, you're not guaranteed to get a certain amount of traffic when you go after these things. It's just my experience and trends that I've seen, and it's worked out pretty well for me overall. But I'd be curious to hear everyone's thoughts if they try it and they find these clusters, they find other sorts of zero volume keywords. Like, be curious. Like, let me know in the comments on the post, or you can head over to wordsbyevanporter.com and find me there.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Evan. Appreciate your time. And we'll bring you back on before too long and chat some more, get some updates from you. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Good to talk to you.
Thanks again to Evan, and definitely check out his other interviews on The Doug Show and on YouTube. Also, he's written a couple articles over there at Niche Site Project, so have a look there as well. And I want to mention a couple things with this zero volume, search. What do you call these? Zero search volume keywords, right? So I often get questions about it. I get this question all the time because there's several keywords out there that seem to be like very low, or they may even be reported as zero search volume. You got all the context in this discussion, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But people wonder what they should do with the zero volume search terms in the keyword golden ratio, because you need to divide by the search volume. And if the search volume is zero, well, then you got a little trouble there. For the mathematicians out there, you cannot divide by zero. That is undefined. So basically, it's not an exercise that is worthwhile. So if you have a zero volume search term, then don't worry about the keyword golden ratio. It's completely irrelevant. All right. There's no value in trying to calculate it. You can look at the number of all in title results, for example, if you want to, but I would suggest, if you have a site that's been around for, over 6 months, or especially over a year, just say, fuck it. If you see a term and it's a zero volume search term, you think maybe you could rank for it, go for it. Who cares? It's so cheap for you to publish a piece of content that may be worth, thousands of dollars over the life of the post, that it's a no-brainer to have it written or write it yourself. I typically aim for, kind of the shortest, the cheapest amount that I could do to get a little test out there. And then if it works out, well, great. I'll add more content to that post in the future. But the point I'm trying to make here is you can't do the keyword golden ratio in zero volume keywords because you're dividing by zero. Thus, it is a useless exercise. So don't even worry about it. The keyword golden ratio is useful for, terms that actually have a search volume. So you get some kind of data in there with it. But otherwise, just don't worry about it. If you see something that seems like a okay term, go for it. There's very little risk in publishing more content on your site. It'll only cost you either a little bit of time, your own resource, of course, or you could pay someone, if you have the budget, pay someone to write the post and see how it goes. So that's just my opinion. I mean, other people do other stuff. I did create the keyword golden ratio, so I feel like my opinion on the keyword golden ratio it holds some weight. Of course, it's a little bit, biased, my opinion. All my opinions are, I expect, even if I try to not make them be biased. But the point I'm trying to make is don't worry about the keyword golden ratio for a zero volume keyword. Check out Evan's post to get a little bit more guidance on, the island type keywords and clusters of keywords that may be valuable for you to go for. If you want to ask a question, feedback@doug.show. That's how you can get in touch with me. Or there's a phone number in the show notes, in the description. So all you have to do, potentially if you're on your phone, you could just click on it. I won't answer it directly. It's just a voicemail number. But you can leave a voicemail and I will play it on the air if you have, a decent, coherent question that I didn't answer in the last, few episodes. I'll probably put it in. We're getting to the point we have enough episodes here where, I'll play a little greatest hits every once in a while. I may be answering questions that I've already answered a little bit before in a different context, but it's great to hear from you, and I like getting that feedback. So anyway, I'll leave it at that for today. Everyone have a great day, and we will catch you on the next episode.